Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. How often do you think about your brand? If your answer is not that often, then don't expect the market to care too much either. That's according to brand creator and consultant Beck Hughes, who says one of the biggest mistakes businesses make about their brand is looking and feeling the same as everyone else in their industry. To stand out, she says, you need to be more creative and provide memorable experiences for your customers or clients. Beck tells Chris Ashmore that a common misconception business owners have of their brand is that it's just a logo or a design and that there's nothing more tangible about it. Whereas, in fact, branding is a lot more than that. Take pricing, for instance.
If you've got a great brand, you can charge a premium price, not necessarily a premium price, but also the price that feels appropriate and good for you. And that's a really important thing. The other thing is it's about connection and talent attraction. So you want to attract the best people to work with you in your business. That might be employees, but that may also be who you want to network with and who's going to refer your business. So having a great brand is going to bring the right people to you. They're going to feel comfortable with you. I think the other really important thing about a great brand is how you feel as the owner of that brand. If you feel inspired and motivated about how that brand feels to you, you're much more likely to feel great about working with it, about sharing it with people. So that's really important too.
In a nutshell, how does a business improve its brand?
And I think for me, there are probably 4 key things, which are broad things, and there's lots involved in it. But the first thing for me is how you improve your brand is you get better in touch with your meaning. So who are you as a business and what's important to you? What is meaningful to you about your brand and what do you want to communicate? And how are you going to package that up to make it then meaningful for your audience? So I guess that's your brand strategy. How are you going to do that? The second thing is really around how you then become magnetic to your audience. And that starts to get into things like how you look, but it's also around your messaging. How are you going to talk? How are you going to make that ownable in your business? How are you going to create that verbal connection with your audience? And then part of that is also your behavior. So how are you going to create a great experience for your audience? And I think that's very often a missed opportunity in creating a great brand. And then also the third thing, another M, is around management. How do you manage your brand? And that gets forgotten very often because people focus on how their brand looks and what they're going to put on social media, what they're going to put on Instagram. But what they don't do is manage their brand well. So look after their assets, make sure that they have ownership over all of the accounts that are linked to their brand, like their email or where their website's hosted, and checking in on things, making sure all their contact forms on their website work or all their links work, that people are going to have a good experience. So managing and looking after your brand is a really important practice, and it's an ongoing practice in your business. And then the last thing about how you improve your brand is how you gain momentum. So very often when I do a branding project with a client, it's like when I hand over all those brand assets and their guidelines, it's the end of the road. But that's not the end of the road for a brand. So you then need to start thinking about how am I going to build my profile? How am I going to get my brand out into the world? And those behaviours around building profile and being seen are really, really important and can't be forgotten.
They're all good pointers there, Becky, but what are some mistakes that people make with their brand?
Okay. Defaulting to the industry standard. So I see this all the time. I'm a hairdresser, so I've got to have a pair of scissors and some wavy hair in my logo. Or I'm an accountant, so I've got to talk in a very serious way. And in Sydney, and this is a thing, you can go and check this out, just about every accountant has a picture of the Harbour Bridge on their website homepage. I'm not joking. So I think there's very often this thing where people will default to the industry language or vernacular because they think they've got to fit in. But by fitting in, you kind of disappear and you blend in. So it's really important to look at, am I fitting into standards that actually aren't important to my audience? It's a missed opportunity not to challenge some of those standards.
Are there any well-known companies, Becky, that you admire for their good branding?
There's a few obvious ones. I always talk about Apple. And the reason for Apple's great branding is not just their visual, which is very clean and beautiful and recognisable. What Apple do brilliantly is the brand experience. So I always talk about my husband, and he's obsessed with Apple. He's just an Appleophile, if that's a thing. That needs to be a thing. And he loves the experience of receiving an Apple product. So what it looks like when it arrives, how it's packaged, that ritual of opening it, there's 3 or 4 little boxes. It's like opening a Russian doll in the beautiful little instruction leaflet. They manage that customer experience from purchase through to opening through to use brilliantly. I would also say Dyson a little bit are very similar in that way, in how they have really invested in the experience. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Experience in brand is often overlooked as an opportunity. You kind of focus on, let's create a brand, let's communicate, what am I going to post on Instagram? And you forget what I call the after party. What are people going to experience when they actually engage with you?
Terrific. Is there ever a good time to rebrand?
There is an appropriate time to rebrand, I think. This comes down to what I call the brand life cycle. So very often when people start out in business, we've all done it. We go, right, I just want to get started. I've got this idea. I need a logo. I just want a quick, easy website, 2 or 3 pages. So you kind of DIY. And that DIY approach is not only acceptable, it's smart. It's the clever thing to do. But I think if your business then picks up and you get traction and you go through a growth period and a learning period, very often at about 18 months, 2 years, 3 years in, you'll find that maybe some things aren't hanging together as well as they could be. So there is definitely a time period that I find usually the rebrand conversation will come up, because I think businesses do evolve in those early years. And the reasons that you would find that there might be that sort of misalignment that has come from that evolution is your brand may not reflect what you do as a business anymore. So you may have changed your services, you've changed what you care about, what you stand for, who you want to work with. So your brand no longer reflects those things. So that's a really good reason to rebrand. Another good reason to rebrand is acquisitions and mergers. So sometimes if you join forces with another business or you acquire another business, then it may become appropriate to rebrand to bring those different offers together if they're slightly different offers. Another reason to rebrand, which I suppose is a bit of a negative, but it often does become an opportunity, is if you're kind of struggling with a negative perception. So there might be negative perception in your industry as a whole, if something has kind of happened in your industry, or if you as a business have had challenges or trouble in the past that you then need to redirect. And a good way to redirect that is through a rebrand.
That was brand creator and consultant Beck Hughes. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.